Welcome back. Well, today we're going to cover a news article that was put out in Norway by the local newspaper. And when I look at the thumbnail today, Throw the Girl Out of the House, I guess the artist who made that thumbnail figured it's like being thrown under the bus at 15 years old. Could you imagine being 15 years old and being thrown out of the house? Could you imagine? Perhaps you know stories of ones that have been thrown out of the house at a young age. If you do, put them in the comments, as it's important for us to get this information out to show the world that yes, there is more than a couple of 3 incidents, isolated incidences in Norway. And this is what the JW lawyers are saying. They're saying that this is isolated to these 3 activists in Norway, and they're making a big scene and a big fuss. They're saying this is not the norm. This does not happen within their nice religion. So you're the audience. If you have comments, throw them in the comments so that we can see really that this is not an isolated incident. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to go to the Norway newspaper. And this is kind of what it looks like. This is the domestic news, the morning newspaper. This was put out on the 18th, Throw a Teenage Girl Out of the House. And we'll look at the pictures at the end here. I'm just going to try to get down here. So there's the courtroom scene. Excommunicated witness Numi Pilot breaks down in tears in the witness stand of the group behind her. There are 8 witnesses, but according to Idis, the witnesses lined up people from their ranks as close to the witness stand in Oslo as possible. So it looks like behind this witness is a lot of just Jehovah's Witnesses from the Kingdom Hall. And we'll read more about that. Okay, well, let's get into the article, and I'll change the display here. Okay, so the article starts out by saying the consequences have been a bit different for me than many because I was never baptized. So I've been able to have some contact with those from the family who are still inside, says Eydís Mary Jónsdóttir. I don't know if I said that right. In an interview with Morgunblaðið. I don't know if I said that right either. I'm going to apologize in advance for all the mistakes I'm going to make on words, but I'll do my best. So this lady, she was born into the religious community of Jehovah's Witnesses, but left it at an age of 15. However, the consequences of growing up in an environment with negative social restraints are the same whether one is baptized or not, she continues. Idis has returned from Oslo, Norway, where she has sat part of the main proceedings of the case Jehovah's Witnesses against the Norwegian state before the District Court of Oslo, in which the religious association demands to get its state funding back. But they were deprived of it by the ruling of the state representative in Oslo in Viken in January 2022. Following that, the Norwegian state broadcast NRK exposed the ostracism and exclusion of Jehovah's Witnesses in a series of God's Ultival, which is an investigative journalism team they had trouble with. So this is a picture here of Idis together with her husband, Gudmund Stefan. But he sat the trial with her. So they sat there together. Okay, made to account for his sexual behavior. The State Commissioner's Office considered the behavior of the management of Jehovah's Witnesses to be a violation of the law on religious organizations, but the Norwegian Minister of Children and Families has assigned the office to investigate the case preparation and the ruling of the religious organization. In God's Chosen, Brenna managers reported on the conditions that Jehovah's Witnesses set for their members, such that young people were required to give a detailed account of their sexual behavior to the elders of the religious organization, in addition to talking to ex-witnesses who have been ostracized, and some of them had who had very limited or no social background behind them. A new law on religious associations entered into force in Norway in 2021, and all religious associations were invited to renew their registration in accordance with that law. However, Jehovah's Witnesses do not meet the requirements to be a registered religious organization in Norway in light of the new law. Sat directly behind the witness. The religious association now demands before the District Court of Oslo, in addition to the ruling on the above being ruled invalid, that the state pays them a total of 51 million Norwegian kroner, equivalent to almost 672 million Iceland kroner, plus interest, which is the amount that the association believes it has with the state due to deprived grants in the years 2021 and 2023. So now they're shooting for 70 million. It'll come out later here, is what they're after. 70 million now. Krones. A number of witnesses have appeared before the court, both high-ranking administrators within the religious association and former members who have suffered ostracism. And Idis reports on how members crowded into the assembly hall, and in at least one case, listen to this, folks, an elder from the Religious Association's Council of Elders sat directly behind a woman in the witness stand whom he himself had decided should be expelled. So here's an elder who disfellowshipped a woman, a victim, in the witness stand. She's giving her statement, and this a-hole sat right behind her. Who would orchestrate something like that to put the victim, to put the culprit, the bully, the elder? That's what they did. Former witnesses and their baptized relatives also met there, says Idis. For example, there was a witness who I looked up to looking past his parents and younger sister. He pretended not to know them. Same with the daughter-in-law. Witnesses from the group of former witnesses knew almost all the witnesses who attended, and in many cases had been close to them, she says, of those present in the courtroom. So there's a picture of Idis and her mother, and they left the Jehovah's Witness at the time, but was careful to show complete neutrality toward her daughter's presence in the religious community. And the day came, however, that Idis saw her bed open in anger. So how did it all begin? My mother was a witness when I was little, continues Idis. She divorced my dad, who was still always on the sidelines in the club. He went to the gatherings, didn't celebrate Christmas and all that, but never really took the plunge. They divorced when I was 6 years old, and as it was presented to me when I was 6 years old, my mother left the church, and naturally, I just believed that she was going to die in Armageddon, end of the world, according to the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses, which I believed that year 2000 would come, she says. It was set up for us siblings that Dad promised to help us survive Armageddon if we chose him in the divorce. So all of us siblings actually chose to live with Dad, completely unrelated to anything other than the fact that we were going to survive Armageddon, so our relationship with our mother was in many ways destroyed by this. For example, my brother didn't invite my mother to his wedding, says Idis, who goes on to say that she grew up mostly within the congregation. My father drank a lot, and I had enough of it when I was 15, and I decided to move home with my mother, with whom I had a very limited relationship with until then, where I had the privacy to be myself, recalls Idis. Her mother did not say anything about the religious community to her daughter, neither positive nor negative, but drove her to meetings and allowed her to completely rule the road. The turning point in the cap. The reason I decided to go out there was a meeting I attended, a book study that was always on Tuesdays. It was flu season and many people were sick, and there was only one baptized man who was 14 years old, And then women and children, says Idis of the day, she decided that she would not associate with Jehovah's Witnesses. A woman in the group decided to take control of the book study, which women are not allowed to do, but there was no one else qualified to manage it. She then put on a 66-degree north cap and said she put the headgear on to show her submission to man and Jesus and God. Because she was a woman, she would have to put on the headdress to show that she was submissive. And this just shows the courtroom. Ida said there that she had seen her bedspread in anger when this woman, for whom she had great respect, made this statement. And I never went to a meeting again. There was just something wrong with me. But there, I also perhaps had the space to think for myself as I lived with my mother, who was no longer part of the congregation and was therefore no longer exposed to this negative social restraint that dominates the congregation, especially the women. Have you suffered any setbacks since you left the company? And I would think company would be the Kingdom Hall, the congregation. It goes on to say, because I'm not baptized, people in the association can approach me and talk to me, but the relationship is always limited. I've never experienced a normal relationship with those relatives who are part of the congregation, but that's just because I wasn't baptized. They naturally believe that my family and I will die, hopefully soon in Armageddon, so it may be logical in their eyes not to put much energy into building a relationship with me, aside from how bad company, or they call it bad association, I am. Since I am not a witness in Votunum, there is no infant baptism. Children are baptized much later. I think the average age is 14 to 15 years old, Idis explains, adding that the parents do not make the decision about baptism. The children answer questions, and then the elders decide if they are ready or not for baptism. And that's the way it is around the world. They have questions that you have to go through before you get baptized. And you have to study. I know for me, I had to study a bunch of books before I could get baptized. It took a couple of years for sure, for me. Okay, so unbaptized. So she grew up, or unbaptized colored corneas. If a child has not received baptism at the age of 15, it's common for her peers, his or her peers in the congregation to look askance at him, not to look at him right, even push him to the side and keep a certain distance. They don't physically push you to the side, but they just don't include you. You don't get included in all of the other things. All the other younger people are out maybe playing football, but you're left at home. No one calls you. I grew up in this, and for me it was normal. I had no comparison, but now my oldest child is 20, and I've raised my children, and really myself again. And then maybe you realize how strong and formative this negative social control is and how serious the consequences are, says Idis. She grew up in a Curie, but later lived in this place here. I'll let you guys pronounce it. And then in this place, she was the only girl in that town who was a witness. Apart from me, there were only my siblings and some younger children. And I just remember this feeling of being alone a lot. I wasn't allowed to go to class nights. I wasn't allowed to go to annual festivals. And I didn't participate in sports after school. But I think I've knocked on the door of every single house in Osterland built before 1994, says Idis of the years before East. So, yeah, that's the way it is growing up as a witness kid. You don't get involved in the community at all. But yet you knock on everyone's houses in the community. What were the reasons for those rules not being allowed to attend parties with people outside the religious community? Well, she says the witnesses do not see themselves as part of the world. They believe that the world, which is everything outside of the religious community, is in the power of the evil one. And there are only Satan and evil spirits trying to get you away from Jehovah and use everything they can. It's exactly what I was taught. So they teach that all over the world. They scare people. She goes on to say, they just walk around like roaring lions. This is what they teach, looking for someone to devour. This is how I was taught to look at people outside the congregation. Yeah. And that's why you have to watch out for teachers and also other children, that they don't take your mind away from Jehovah, says Idis. And she continues, because the matter is even more complicated. It is very complicated. So there's a picture of the courtroom. Is Idis there? Idis, together with former Belgian witnesses Belinda and Patrick Hayek, in the district court. How you spend your time also matters. Are you spending it doing something for Jehovah, or are you doing something that is just fun but could keep you from getting through Armageddon? It's always the fear. Jehovah also knows what you are thinking. He not only sees what you do, but what you think. So you need to be careful not to think bad thoughts, then you'll just die at Armageddon, says Idis. Yeah, it is like that. Witnesses the ostracism of 5 years. Witness the ostracism of 5 years. Children with limited development and understanding of life and reasoning absorb this information raw, and it becomes its reality. You always have to be careful what you do and who you are with. What you think. If you are with someone of the world who wants to do something that is forbidden to you, then you are just in great danger and experience real danger to your life. Just buying a lottery ticket is potentially life-threatening. And this is very special and something I have had a hard time explaining properly, says the former child witness. And she's so true. There's so many different records of indoctrination that are put into our head. It takes years of continual work to undo all of it. And then you might not get it all done. In the continuation of this description, Idis points to another side of the matter, but it can be noted that she first remembers witnessing the ostracization of her fellow believers when she was 5 years old. If you offend in any way, for example, teenagers who start to have sex, whether it's masturbation or with others, or associate with people who have left the church, the Kingdom Hall, ask too difficult questions about the faith or management of the church, the elders, if you complain about the elders, then you are in danger to be fired and subsequently ostracized. So you're going to get expelled, disassociated, ostracized. This is a huge fear factor because it's not just the congregation that ostracizes you, it's your family too, says Idis, and gives an example. So this is another courtroom. The courtroom was crowded during the main proceedings of the case against the Norwegian state, and the witnesses demand an amount of almost 700 million Iceland dollars from the government. 700 million Iceland dollars is what they're asking for. Wow. The worst thing is to leave the church or leave the Kingdom Hall. Newspapers always say church, but Jehovah's Witnesses hate the word church. In the phone book, it's always written Kingdom Hall. She clearly remembers a girl who was then 15 or 16 years old and was thrown out of her home. She just had to take care of herself. If I think about the kids in a Curie, I think at least half of them, maybe more, got into all kinds of messes or trouble. And some have even re-entered the congregation, as it is difficult to establish oneself as a young person when the entire support network is taken away. It has such serious consequences for people to grow up in such a fear management environment, recalls Idis. According to Idis, many of the former witnesses who took the witness stand in Oslo District Court during the main hearing of the case told the judge that they had suffered from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. That tells you a lot, and I myself have been diagnosed with this disorder. Normal PTSD is due to something that happens in adulthood. People have an accident, for example. But a complex disorder develops in you when you are a child and your brain is not fully developed, usually because that child lives for a long time in unsafe conditions, explains Idis. And Jehovah's Witnesses teach that the worst thing people in the congregation can do is to leave the congregation. And then it is at the power of Satan and the very last kind of people. So when you quit on your own, it's so ingrained in you that these people are bad that you don't want to be just as bad by going and talking to them. And this is a regime that extends beyond that when you quit, says Idis, recalling the group of the former witnesses in Iceland did. However, start talking together because of religious violence, for which she received a journalism award last year. And then we realized that we all had these same experiences, the same traumas, the same long-term consequences. There are about 6 or 7 of us women who all had to leave the labor market for varying lengths of time to work on ourselves. And this is very costly for the state and for the society, that the people are so badly off many years after this experience that they can't work full time, maybe for a long time, says Idis, from the experience of women who started discussing the issues amongst themselves. So here you have a group of them in Norway who got together and started saying, wow, we all have the same experiences. We all have the same complex PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndromes. And that's because this is ingrained into the children at a young age, this fear. They're always living in fear. And children believe what their parents are going to say. If the mom and dad say, Armageddon is going to come any day now, what do you think the children's going to be thinking? This is not good for the child's mind as it grows up. It's all fairy tales, of course, you and I know that. But to the Jehovah's Witness people, they believe this stuff. Now, forbidden to eat with Jehovah's adversaries. We turn to the trial in Oslo and what happened in the main proceedings of the case of Jehovah's Witness against Norwegian state. First, however, comes a small preface. Idis reports that after the ex-witnesses started talking to each other, the Association of Religious Violence Enthusiasts was born. Following the media coverage of the case of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the spokesman for the religious organization in Scandinavia, Norwegian, Jordan Peterson, wrote articles that appeared in the Morgunblaðið on March 18th last year. That must be the name of the newspaper. So here it is. I can't read all that. It's right there, though, if you can read Norwegian. I'll leave it up for a while. Let you look at it. I'll put a link in the article in the description here so you guys can retrieve some of this if you want to look at it. Okay, the article goes on to say there he wrote that this Jordan Peterson wrote everything that was based on a misunderstanding, and that Jehovah's Witnesses were sorry that they were spoken so badly. So here they are, they make victims of themselves. They're sorry that their people are speaking badly about them. So he's sorry about that, but he's not sorry about the victims. Idis, she says, and who responded to Peterson's message with an article on Visi. After I wrote this reply, I was in a position to accept that. In all likeliness, no witness will ever want to talk to me again. That's how she feels. In fact, they are no longer allowed to sit at the same table as me, have coffee with me. It is forbidden to eat, drink at the same table as the Jehovah's opponents, which is what they call me now, Jehovah's opponents. For example, my oldest brother hasn't been in touch with me since I wrote this article, and neither have I. Some relatives have also broken ties with me on a social media, says Idis, of the consequences of the article that Visor published. So let's just look at that article. Okay, we're going to cover the section on hate speech. Sorry, my columns were off there, but I got them fixed now. Hate speech is generally defined as any form of expression, oral or written, that spreads, incites, promotes, justifies hatred based on intolerance. Think about that. Let's read that again. Is Jehovah's Witness literature, Elders' book, is the design of the religion, does it fit this? Hate speech is generally defined as any form of expression, oral or written, that spreads throughout congregations, incites, promotes, or justifies hatred based on intolerance. So they're intolerant toward whatever a person's doing. You could just be associating with a disfellowship person and become shunned and hated, and this will spread. In addition, there must be an intention to promote hatred of a certain group and some kinds of motivation to be able to talk about hate speech. There are countless examples of that on the website of Jehovah's Witness religious organization, where former members and other enemies of Jehovah are written about and how they should hate and attack or kill the witnesses. Although you write on the website that former witnesses hate Jehovah's and the congregation, that is not a fact. Most, if not all of us who are outside the congregation have loved ones within the congregation with whom we wish only good and wish to be able to have a healthy and good relationship. Most of us experience deep sorrow at having to mourn our relationship with living people who are still inside the religious community. And when news comes of incidents like the ones in Hamburg, we are no less saddened than the witnesses. In the discussion here in Iceland over the past year, I have not come across anything that is encouraging hatred or violence toward the witnesses. People's experiences are only being told, and demands are being made to ensure that religious organizations follow the law on registered religious organizations, which states that registered religious organizations must not commit anything that is contrary to the good morals of the public order. And the experience of many former witnesses is that the Religious Association of Jehovah's Witnesses does not fulfill this provision. And in a democratic society, we are allowed to point that out. So I was just reading on this pinned article that was off of here. There was that pinned article on Visi. I just read a paragraph out of it. And again, I will pin both articles here so you can look at the whole thing. They're very good. The one on Visi was against the Jordan Peterson. He went out and wrote his article, so an article was written back. Now, she says here, after I wrote this reply, I was in a position to accept that in all likelihood, no witness will ever want to talk to me again. And I'll just fix my margin here. She goes on to say, in fact, they are no longer allowed to sit at the same table as me and have coffee with me. It is forbidden to eat and drink at the same table as Jehovah's opponents, which is what they call me now. For example, my oldest brother hasn't been in touch with me since I wrote this article, and neither have I. Some relatives have also broken ties with me on a social media for the consequences of publishing that article. We just read a paragraph out of it. Lined up influential people on the witness stand. Because of the above, and not the least to show support to other former witnesses, Idis decided to attend the trial in Oslo, and she was not alone on the boat. On the contrary, former witnesses from all Nordic countries as well as friends of Idis from Belgium were there, but current witnesses also crowded the courtroom. The witnesses are trying to overturn the reasons given by the state for not meeting the conditions to receive the grant money. It's all about money, sadly. It was an incredible, amazing experience to go in there, and the hall was full of witnesses, and many of them were so-called district shepherds. They are supposed to take care of the congregation and look after the elders, and there was also elders there, and also many people who were connected to the witnesses, says Idis. Saying goodbye to the witnesses, she tried to arrange influential people closest to the witnesses, stand, such as in the example of the witness mentioned above. Behind the witness sat the elder who kicked the witness out of the congregation at the time. So they organized this, the Jehovah's Witnesses. There's your picture we looked at the front. They come as soon as the house opens, and they try to fill the front seats, says Idis, adding that the testimony of the witnesses was striking. For example, Numi Pilate collapsed in the witness stand, as the first photo of this interview shows. And of the people sitting behind Pilate, seen in the picture, 8 are witnesses, and you can read from the expressions of some of them how they like the testimony. Never looked toward his parents. My husband is not a witness. He sat next to me and wept. But when you look at the witnesses, they were completely frozen in expression throughout the trial, says Idis. But her husband, Gumurdur, I don't know how to say his name, her husband, he understood well what happened in court materially, as they lived for years in Denmark, so Norway or Norwegian is understandable to them. And there was also a family that had not been expelled from the church. There is what is called faded, and they're in a gray area, so to speak. One day their daughter-in-law was in the hall, and she didn't want to talk to them. The next day her son arrived, but he made sure never to look in that direction. And at the same time, the witnesses were trying to argue in court that the congregation was not asking relatives to exclude each other, that it was an individual decision, says Eydís Mary, in conclusion of her life with Jehovah's Witnesses in the trial in Oslo, where the religious association is suing the Norwegian government for repaying the amount for hundreds of millions of Iceland dollars, after the Norwegian authorities deprived them of all payments from the state. And the trial will be discussed in more detail, and the verdict will be published here on MBL is. End of article. Well, that's just one more example of throwing your kids under the bus. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses have thrown their kids under the bus. They've thrown them out of the house. They even in their teens, are going through it. It's a very influential part of their life. They're growing up. They have to soon leave home. And they're throwing kids out too early, throwing them out at 16, 17, when they need that reinforcement to get them set up and get on their own. They're going to make mistakes. We made mistakes. And you see that part of the Bible, John chapter 8, verse 1 to 11. Read it if you're a Jehovah's Witness. Open up your Bible and read it. Oh, wait a minute. It's been taken out. They took it out 10 years ago in the 2013 edition. But it was there, but they took it out. Why? Because Jesus simply said, "You who have not sinned, cast the first stone." And all the Pharisees walked away, because everyone's a sinner. We're all sinners. We all make mistakes. And that's how we learn, that's how we grow, and that's how we get better. But if we're made to feel guilty and bad and evil and demonic for making a few mistakes, then the religion needs an overhaul. Or what's happening in Norway is exactly what has to happen around the earth. The governments have to look at this religion in particular and say, wait a minute here, wait a minute. It's not following the rules of other charitable religions. We've got to look at this and examine it a little closer. So thanks to Norway for all of their hard work. Thanks to Idis for this wonderful article and the other article that she went head-to-head with Jordan Peterson on. Really good job in Norway. And that brings an end to our program. Throw the girl out of the house, throw the girl under the bus. On the bus, the little Jehovah's Witness kids are, well, 2 of them are really happy on the bus. They're holding hands. The other 2 are kind of going, what the hell? There's people in the congregation going, what? And they're wondering, what do we do? Well, we're asking, or we're not asking, but we're making available on the outside. We have communities, and if you go into all of our videos, there's a Discord channel in the Discord channel. It's a closed community. No one can see your comments. There's no trolls. No one's looking at it. It's a closed community, and we share all kinds of stuff. The community's growing. There's translator bots. So if you're of another language and you want to come in and get a message, post it. There's translator bots. You type your message in, it just throws it into the community. And you can post news. Anything that's happening in your community, maybe you don't want to post it. You don't have a channel, but you want to get it over to us. This is a good medium. We don't even know who's putting the information in there. You can be very anonymous if you want. It's really up to you. So we welcome everyone to our channel, and we are all over the world creating environments or communities, safe places for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses to come to and find that there's a whole group of us. And we're looking back, and we're completely awake. We're smiling now because we undid a lot of the indoctrination. And we'll help you. There's a XJW recovery program. One of the community members made a book through a psychologist and therapist. And that book is free to everyone. I'm going over it for the first time, and I invite any that want to attend. We have room open for that. It's the XJW recovery program. I will post in this end of this video, you'll see a video on it. Just click it, and it'll show you all about it. We'd welcome you. It's every Saturday. It's at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, our time. It's always open. And yeah, we're on there for about 2 hours. So it's a good chat community. Well, thanks again, folks. And remember, the most important thing that we were taught from the Bible is to keep living our life with love. Love should be in the Elders book 130 times, not disfellowshipping. Love's only in their Elders book 5 times. We looked the other day. It should be in there 130 times. The word disfellowshipping should be thrown out. It's ancient history. But it's not up to us to do that. We have all these ideas to help the organization, but they keep holding on to their old ways. So the only thing you can do is hop out, realize that the doctrines are based on falsehoods, lies, just like what they do in court. They lie, 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 lie. And if you lie enough, people believe the lies. And that's what's happening. So until next time, we live our life with love and not lies. It really makes a difference. See you next time, folks. Bye for now.